That I want to welcome everybody who's joining us online. Thank you for being with us. Go ahead and comment in. Let us know where you're watching from. We're in our third installment of our House of Prayer series. I pray that this is ministering to you and everybody who's joining us in person today. We are in Daniel chapter 10, verses 1 through 14. Have a long passage. I never apologized for reading the Bible. I hear all the time pastors start, I'm so sorry. This is a long passage. I'm going to try to condense. Why are we apologizing for reading God's word in God's house? I probably just offended somebody. Don't turn the channel. Don't turn on me now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you're offended, but I meant it. I joked last week and said I'm in rare form. Worship Director Hayden, I think I'm in rare form again today. Daniel chapter 10. Can we just give it up also for our worship directors, Hayden and Jessica Fox? They're just doing such an amazing job. And Lucky always doing an amazing job setting an atmosphere. It's this ethereal presence of the Lord when He plays. I love that. Daniel chapter 10, I'm going to be reading through verses 1 through 14. Let's hear God's word together. In the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belteshazzar. The word was true. It was a great conflict. And he understood the word and had understanding of the vision. There's a shift that takes place. That's kind of a heading over the chapter. And there's a shift that now takes place and a movement into the first person where Daniel begins to recount this experience. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 weeks. I ate no delicacies. No meat or wine entered my mouth. Nor did I anoint myself at all for the full 3 weeks. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like a beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and the sound of his words like the sound of a multitude. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision. Oh, we're going to deal with that. The men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great trembling fell upon them, and they fled to hide themselves. So I was left alone and saw this great vision, and no strength was left in me. My radiant appearance was fearfully changed, and I retained no strength. Then I heard the sound of his words. And as I heard the sound of his words, I fell on my face in deep sleep with my face to the ground. Verse 10. And behold, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. And he said to me, "O Daniel, man greatly loved, understand the words that I speak to you and stand upright. For now I have been sent to you." And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. Then he said to me, "Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day," somebody say the first day, from the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But Michael, one of the chief priests, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia, and came to make you understand what is to happen to your people in the latter days. For the vision is for days yet to come. I want to speak to you from this subject. Write this down: prayer and fasting. A spiritual opening. Prayer and fasting, a spiritual opening. Lord Jesus, help us today to understand your words, to hear them, and to respond to them. Let our hearts be good soil upon which the word from the volume of your book can be planted and bring forth all that it's intended to do. In the name of Jesus, we pray these things. And the church said, amen. Our text today is located in the broader context of some historical movements that happened throughout the history of the Jewish people. There was a shifting of power that began to occur in the ancient Near East outside of modern-day Israel. The southern kingdom of Judah here that's being referenced here about their exile to Babylon. In 606 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, a ruthless warrior, began deporting people from Israel to Babylon as a result of Israel's unfaithfulness to God and their breaking of covenant with God. God warned them in Torah and gave them a list of blessings and cursings that would follow their adherence to the covenant that he made with them or their breaking of it. And they broke it, and they broke it, and they broke it, and he was gracious, and he was gracious, and he warned them, and he warned them, and he warned them, and he was gracious, and then he said, that's it. Judgment is coming. Just like I said, I explained if you did these things, this would happen. And I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried to get your attention. So in 586 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar and the kingdom of Babylon fully ransacked the southern kingdom of Judah and its capital, Jerusalem, and destroyed the temple. The place where the people of God thought this could never be harmed was then destroyed, and almost all the people were taken out of their homeland and dragged in chains to Babylon. Imprisoned there, transformed there, names taken away, identity taken away, religious freedom taken away, all that they held dear, the worship in the temple taken away, their homes taken away, their wives and children taken away. Everything they found normal was taken away from them. This context that occurred historically is what Jeremiah the prophet warned about. You say, how does this deal with Daniel? We're getting there. Let me lay a little bit of background. This is going to make this sermon make so much more sense. Jeremiah had been prophesying all through this time and said, please, you watch the northern kingdom of Israel go through this by the kingdom of Assyria in 722, 721 BC. Do not fall into what they experienced. Repent, change, be transformed, and be rescued and saved. They would not listen. In fact, they bound him up in chains. They tried to kill him. They tried to silence him. And they enjoyed the voices of false prophets who said, God's blessing is upon us. His favor is upon us. God loves us, and He's happy with us. It doesn't matter how we're living. God is proud of us. Does that sound familiar? Should. It's what we're hearing today. And yet Jeremiah is the only one who's weeping and crying and mourning over the despicable sins that are being committed in this southern kingdom. And he cries out on behalf of a nation and says, oh God, please spare them. He cries out and they attempt to silence them. He's known as the weeping prophet who seems to only give bad news every time he opens his mouth. And yet amid the bad news, Jeremiah gives this report in Jeremiah 25, verses 8 through 14. Let me read it for you. You can write this down and look it up later. Jeremiah chapter 25, verses 8 through 14. Therefore, the Lord Almighty says this, because you have not listened to my words, I will summon all the peoples of the north and my servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. You say, wait a minute, this wicked, apostate, godless king in a wicked regime is God's servant to bring about his purposes? Yes. Be careful who you assign God's activity to in the earth. You don't know who he might be wanting to work through to accomplish his purposes. Because you have not listened to my words, I will summon all the peoples of the north and my servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, declares the Lord. And I will bring them against this land and its inhabitants and against all the surrounding nations. I will completely destroy them and make them an object of horror and scorn and an everlasting ruin. I will banish them the sounds of joy and gladness, the voices of bride and bridegroom, the sound of millstones and the light of the lamp. The whole country will become a desolate wasteland, and these nations will serve the king of Babylon 70 years. But, somebody say but when the 70 years are fulfilled, I will punish the king of Babylon and his nation, the land of the Babylonians, for their guilt, declares the Lord, and will make it desolate forever. I will bring on that land all the things I've spoken against it, and all that are written in this book and prophesied by Jeremiah against all the nations. They themselves will be enslaved by many nations and great kings. I will repay them according to their deeds and the work of their hands. So here's what's happening. Daniel was one of the people taken in 606 BC to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar and his armies. The rest of the people, the majority, were taken in 586 BC. And in Daniel chapter 9, if you read the chapter before this, Daniel, the text says, open the scroll of Jeremiah. And he begins to read from the scroll of Jeremiah. And in the scroll of Jeremiah, he realizes God had said in 70 years, he's going to destroy Babylon and set us free. And Daniel said, oh my goodness, it's been 70 years. It's now 537, 536. I came in 606. It's been 70 years. It's time for God's promise to be fulfilled. So he begins to pray the prophetic promises of God until they happen. So God raises up Cyrus, the beginning of our text, verse 1, Cyrus, king of Persia, to come and destroy Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom of Babylon and to send the Jewish people back to their homeland. Daniel was fasting and praying in chapter 9 and began to pray the promises of God found in Jeremiah. That brings us to Daniel chapter 10, where something occurs in Daniel chapter 10. The people, the Hebrew people, the Jewish people began returning back to the land. And after great joy and excitement that, hey, we're going home, they realized, oh my goodness, everything's ruined. All the infrastructure's destroyed, and the temple's destroyed, and our houses are destroyed, and they've been laying desolate for 70 years, and all the excitement that came back with going back home is now stripped away, and they become discouraged and say, we don't have the resources, we don't have any money to do this, we don't have this, that, and the other, we don't have the manpower. We've been basically a slave class for 70 years and lost many of the skills that we once had. How are we going to reinstitute life and worship with God like it once was? How are we going to build back a temple? And Daniel, 2 years later, where Daniel chapter 10 occurs, in the year of Cyrus' reign, he begins to become concerned about his people. See, Daniel remained at his station in Babylon while the others were sent back. And Daniel begins to be concerned about his people. And he sees that progress isn't being made like it should. And he sees discouragement. And he sees these Samaritan nations around and the Samaritans around who begin to oppose. And nations begin to oppose their activity and begin to try to wipe them out again. And Daniel said, no. I prayed and I fasted and God fulfilled his promise, and now there's opposition to its fulfillment. So what does Daniel do? He prays and he fasts again because he's heartbroken over the state of his people. He said, my people, I don't know what will come of them. And God, I need you to give me insight into their future. I need another promise. I need something to grab hold of that will bolster my faith and give me courage in the in-between. So the text says, on the 24th day of the first month, known as Nisan in the Jewish calendar, this is the months of March and April in our Western calendar, but it's the first month, the 24th day. This is the time of Passover. So Daniel's going into a festal celebration mode where he's supposed to be commemorating that God freed his people from the hand of Pharaoh and the Egyptians and took them through where there was no way and brought them into a land that was promised to them. Daniel's supposed to be celebrating this reality, and as he's reminded of the slavery of God's people to Egypt, he's now troubled by the reality that they may be trapped again. So rather than placing upon him the oils of gladness and festival celebration and feasting and the enjoyment of Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, instead of enjoying all the rituals that brings, that sparks in his mind the problem that God's people face again. And he goes into a season of fasting. And he says, I know that everybody else is celebrating. I know that everybody else is remembering and excited and rejoicing. But I have problems within my heart that God needs to resolve. I have fear and uncertainty about the trajectory that God's people are going. We've been through too much to see God's promises left alone. So I need to forego the celebration for a moment and begin to pray and fast. That is precisely what Daniel does. He exchanged the choice delicacies that were provided from his position in Babylon and said, I'm going to forego all of these choice foods. I'm going to sacrifice those things, and I'm going to have the very basics that are needed for survival. In an effort to leave the busyness of his station in Babylon and his responsibilities, the text says that Daniel went to the river Tigris. The Tigris River is mentioned one other place in Genesis chapter 2 at the mention of the 4 rivers that split from the Garden of Eden and went out and watered the earth. The Tigris was one of those rivers, and perhaps Daniel in his mind said, if I can get 20 miles away from the busyness of this city, for the river where he went was about 20 miles away from the capital in Babylon where he was. If I can get about 20 miles away, if I can have some escorts take me there, maybe, just maybe, I can get away from the noise of my duties and my responsibilities and hear from heaven something that will bring consolation and encouragement to my heart. So Daniel, at this point, at the ripe old age of 85, see, we see storybook Daniel and think he's probably 20 when he's doing this. He died between the ages of 86 and 90. He's fasting at this point up to near his time of death. He didn't quit on God because he went into retirement. He didn't stop serving God because he went off to Tahiti and an island and quit on God and his people. He didn't stop contending for the promises of God. Now, I'm all about some retirement and vacations, but I'm saying I think we've distorted its purpose. It should free you more openly to serve God's purposes in the earth rather than to serve our own purposes. I probably just offended the other people who weren't. So, again, rare form this morning. He's at the Tigris River. He's 85, near death. He's weak. He's been fasting for 3 weeks. And he says, I got to get 20 miles away from these responsibilities. I need to go to the sacred river and this place of solace. And maybe God will speak to me about the plight and the future of his people. Because Daniel had given his whole life for this purpose. He had sacrificed everything, willing to undergo death, being eaten by lions for this purpose. He was too deep in the game to quit now and see God's promises fall flat, which they never do, but they're partnered with a praying people. So Daniel goes to the Tigris and reveals several truths about the dynamic connection between prayer and fasting and the way it opens us spiritually. Write this down first. Fasting opens your eyes to see. Fasting opens your eyes to see. Let's look in verses 3 through 7 again. I ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entered my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all for the full 3 weeks. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the Tigris River, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and the sound of his words like the sound of a multitude. And I, Daniel, alone. Somebody say alone. Alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great trembling fell upon them, and they fled and hid themselves. In the midst of Daniel's prayerful reflection by I love being by water. Who else likes being by water and praying, just being by some tranquil waters and just talking to God? This was Daniel's place, and he said, I'm going to go here and just be engrossed in my thoughts of prayer and talk to God. I'm exhausted. I'm weak. I'm frail. I have to have an escort, he did, to help take him there because he's too weak at 85 and fasted for 3 weeks to undergo such a journey. And yet here he is, and he's at this river, and something happens. Something happens for him. He looks up, and he's struck with awe and wonder at what his eyes have beheld. Daniel was not expecting to see what he saw at this river, but fasting opened his eyes to see an angelic messenger clothed in linen, representative of the holy purity and righteousness of God. It's like the linen that priests would wear in the presence of God and in their ministry. He sees this angelic messenger, probably Gabriel. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But he sees him, and his eyes are blinded almost as the radiant glory of God reflects off this angelic messenger, and the gold and the bronze and the diamond kind of jewels. And all of these things are reflecting off of the beautiful Tigris River in almost a blinding fashion. And Daniel sees what those with him do not. They felt something, but their eyes were not open to see it, because fasting opens your eyes to see things spiritually that you could not otherwise see. Fasting opens your eyes spiritually to see things that you otherwise could not see. He perceived something that was beyond his natural reality. He saw into a heavenly realm and dimension that was not otherwise accessible through natural eyes, but fasting opened his eyes to see something that could not otherwise be experienced. He was old, he was hungry, he was near death, and yet fasting unlocked something within him. Fasting enabled him to see God's messenger sent to him. I believe that in this season of prayer and fasting, and I pray that it's not just a season for us, but it's a lifestyle for us moving forward. But I believe in this season, God wants to open your eyes and my eyes to see things about His nature, His character, His purposes, His plans that we could not otherwise see and that we've never seen before. Things that would strike awe and wonder in our hearts. Things that would bring us down on our faces like Daniel in amazement before God. That where you see problems, where you see a lack of provision, you will begin to see the riches of His glory found in Christ Jesus. That where you see physical pain and sickness and disease, your eyes would be open to see the healing that was purchased by the stripes of Jesus. That where you would see relational turmoil and division, that your eyes would be open to see that all things, according to Colossians 1:17, are held together in Christ. That your eyes would be opened to see like John saw in Revelation chapter 4. The messenger to John opened the heavens and said, "Come up here and see what I will show you." God isn't just interested in communicating through our auditory functions. There's something He wants to show us with our eyes. There's a level of glory He wants us to behold. There's a level of revelation and insight that He wants to give. He wants to reveal His purposes over your life. He wants to reveal purposes and plans that He has for our nation and for our world. And He wants to speak some promises that require spiritual sight that are normally unlocked. That kind of sight is normally unlocked by the dynamic combination of prayer and fasting. Church, there is a reason Jesus fasted for 40 days, total fast, before His public ministry began. It wasn't just for fun. Okay? There's something dynamic that occurs through the process of fasting and prayer that unlocks something in our lives. Fasting opens your eyes to see like you've never seen before. Fasting opened Daniel's eyes to see this angelic messenger that other people around him didn't see, but fasting did something else. Write this down. Fasting opens your ears to hear. Fasting opens your ears to hear. Look with me in verse 11. And he said to me, "O Daniel, man greatly loved, understand the words that I speak to you and stand upright. For now I have been sent to you." And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. Daniel goes to this river, 20 miles away, secluded place, in an aim to hear God more clearly. He was fasting to gain understanding about the plight and the future plans of God's people. And so he goes to perhaps hear what God might be saying. And Daniel's ears were open to hear what those with him did not hear. Those with him were trembling and sensed some kind of presence. They sensed something and were afraid, but they did not hear what Daniel heard. Daniel is fasting and praying for insight about God's people and what's going to happen as they're returning and what's their future hold. Is it good news for them? I'm praying and fasting that it is, Daniel said. But this is the first thing his ears are open to hear. God's response first was this: "O Daniel, man greatly loved." Daniel was fasting for insight and the plans of God for other people, and he received more than he bargained for. The first thing God was interested in telling him was, "I love you. I love you. You are highly esteemed in my eyes." The fast opened Daniel's ears to hear what God was saying all along about him, but that he wasn't fully hearing. See, we sometimes fast and pray for other things, and it's not really the main thing that God's interested in. He hears us and responds to us, but sometimes there's a deeper thing going on. And for Daniel, he said, "Listen, it's not because I fast or that you fast that I love you. Your fast and prayer did not earn my love. It enabled you to hear what I've been saying over your life." See, we like to create these works righteousness paradigms that maybe if I fast for 40 days, God will just stop all this madness and stop being mad at me and X, Y, and Z. And maybe fasting for you is not about changing some kind of external, but maybe it's to hear what God's been saying all along. You're highly esteemed by me. You're loved by me. You're cared for. Can you imagine after 21 days, he's old, he's about to die, okay? He's near the end of his life. He's been through so much. He's been made a slave. He's been stripped away from his homeland. He's been taken away, and all through the years, he's been faithful to God, even in spite of potential persecution. And God just wanted him to hear, I love you so much. I can tell you in this time of prayer and fasting, my own ears have been opened up to hear some things from the Lord. I want to tell you one of them. This has been very important for me. I've quoted this my whole life. It's been kind of a life verse, if you will, one of about 5 or 6 that I alternate between. And it's from Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. Jesus quotes it. Realize that Jesus, when he's in the desert and fighting against the attack of Satan, he only uses Deuteronomy. So in your Bible reading this year, don't get mad when you get to Deuteronomy. Jesus absolutely disarmed the devil with Deuteronomy alone. Okay? So just be encouraged when you get there. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. Man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. And during this fast, every time my stomach has growled, every time my attention span has wandered, every time there's been, it's like the Holy Spirit has been blasting in my ears. Man shall not live. Ben, you're not going to live by this food that you're eating alone. It's something that helps your body function the way it's intended, but it's something I've given you, and I'm the one who sustains you, and I'm the one who gives you life, and I'm the one who gives you everything you need. You do not live by bread alone, but you live by the words that come out of my mouth. You live by the words that come from the volume of my book. God has been speaking to me. I think that's why Jesus, when his disciples, I love the comments Jesus made to his disciples. The disciples get hungry, and they're like, Jesus, we need some food, and we're going to go get some, so we'll see you in a bit. So they get some, and they know Jesus hasn't eaten yet, and they try to bring him back some. And Jesus is like, I have food you don't know about. They're like, what? Because we were kind of hungry and you just made us go get food. So what kind of food did you have and did not give to me? Because now I'm irritated. So Jesus said, I have food you don't know about, and it's doing the will of the Father. It nourishes me. It feeds me. It gives me everything that I need. Fasting opens up your ears to hear the words of God over your life and the power of their meaning for you. It did for Daniel. Oh man, greatly loved by God. You're highly esteemed. You're chosen. You're selected. And I love you. When we fast, our ears are not as cluttered about what restaurant we're going to, what we're cooking tonight, what are we doing? Because I think about that stuff, guys. I really do. I really like food. Like, y'all don't understand. My phone is just a compilation of pictures of food from Tiffany and every restaurant we go to. And I'm like, oh, you remember when we went on this vacation? And like all the vacation is food, like pictures of food. You will probably find very few people there. They exist. And some of them are in this room today, but there are very few people who appreciate and enjoy food more than me. I love it. But when I fast, all the noise of food and where am I going and what am I eating and what am I doing, I just say, I get to feast on this today. I know my stomach is screaming. I feel awful. I'm purging on detoxing every awful thing that's been placed in my body, and I'm hangry and I'm mad and I'm having the carbs aren't in there, so my energy's low and I don't feel great. But there's life in these words, and there's something that you're wanting to tell me, and I'm able to hear you better because I'm not concerned about everything else. I'm removing the externals and I'm going to the river, and I just want to hear what you have to say about my life. I just want to hear what you have to say about my family. I just want to hear what you have to say about my future, about this country, about our world. I just want to hear what you have to say, and maybe it's going to take the removal of food to hear God loves you. Maybe you've never really heard it before, but maybe during this season of fasting and prayer, you get to hear some truths from the mouth of God himself that you've maybe never heard ring in your ears. Fasting opened Daniel's ears to hear what nobody else. This was personalized to him. He got to hear what nobody else did. They might have been good people trying to take Daniel to the river and everything else, but he's the only one whose ears were open to hear the words from heaven. You're a man who's highly selected, chosen, and loved by God. Fasting opens your eyes to see. Fasting opens your ears to hear. Write this down. Fasting opens the heavens over your life. Fasting opens the heavens over your life. There's an open heaven that can be over your life. In the deep south where I was born and raised, we used to, in the old country churches, used to say this: you get under the spout where the glory comes out. See, y'all don't know that side of me. Fasting opens the heavens over your life. Look in verses 12 through 14. Then he said to me, "Fear not, Daniel." Oh, wow, that connects so well with what our declaration was today. In a culture surrounded by fear, Daniel, don't be afraid about what you just saw. I know this scared you. I know it startled you. You weren't expecting to see this, but this fasting opened your spiritual eyes and ears to see what you naturally wouldn't see. Don't be afraid, for from the first day, somebody say the first day, the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, but Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me. For I was left there with the kings of Persia and came to make you understand what is to happen to your people in the latter days. For the vision is for days yet to come. This is what Daniel needed to hear from the first day. From the first day. See, sometimes we think that if we just make it long enough, maybe we'll grab the attention of God, and maybe he'll just look at us favorably for 2 seconds. If I just rid myself of food for 50 days and just, oh God, maybe you'll just throw a crumb my way. See, Daniel is told that probably Gabriel, this angelic messenger sent to him on assignment, was dispatched from heaven the first day, the moment Daniel set his heart to humble himself before God Almighty through prayer and fasting and to contend for his people. The moment he did that, heaven responded. The moment. It wasn't his 21-day tenure that magically opened something up in heaven and sent a blessing down his way. From the very moment he set in his heart to do this before God, heaven responded to him. Fasting and prayer yields immediate results. We just often do not see them naturally. Fasting and prayer yields an immediate result from heaven. We just often do not see it happening naturally. So Daniel, wise old man as he was, continued to contend in fasting and prayer because he had not seen the materialization of heaven's response yet. So he continued, although there was immediate action taken, he continued to humble himself and rely on God with prayer and fasting. So heaven probably sent, this is probably, again, scholars believe this is probably Gabriel, and there's a lot of contextual reasons in Daniel 9 and others throughout the book of Daniel that lend us to believe this. So probably Gabriel, so we're just going to say Gabriel moving forward. Daniel was sent Gabriel from heaven, but he was hindered from arriving to Daniel's situation by the prince of Persia. Gabriel was opposed and antagonized by a demonic, evil spirit ruling over the Persian territory. Now Cyrus, the king of Persia, who's been sent to destroy Babylon, he's still a wicked He's still wicked in many ways in terms of their kingdom. It's not a God-fearing, monotheistic kingdom where they're worshiping Yahweh, okay? So there's some demonic activity that's happening in the spiritual realm over Persia, from whence heaven sends Gabriel, and he's resisted by this demonic evil spirit over the territory of Persia. You say, that sounds a little bit strange. It's what's happening in the heavenly realm that we're not fully perceiving. There is activity that's occurring over this nation, over the nations of our world, over people's lives that you don't even realize and perceive with the natural eyes, but can only be unlocked through fasting and prayer, a type of spiritual warfare that deals with the demonic principalities over territories, regions, families, and people. Heaven responded immediately. It had been 21 days. Daniel was 85. He was weak and he was tired, yet he did not give up. And as he contended in prayer and fasting, God sent reinforcements. He said, okay, Daniel, I see you're serious about this thing. I know that Gabriel is hung up in warfare over these demonic spirits in Persia, over this territory and region held captive by demonic influence, and he's warring in the heavenly realms right now. But I see Daniel, and he has yet to give up in prayer and fasting, and he has not stopped contending, and he has not given up hope. And I am going to respond to his tenacity and faithfulness to contend. So I'm going to send the chief warring angel of heaven, Michael, the archangel, one who stands before the presence of the Lord and beholds the glory of God, one whose name literally means who is like our God, one who fights heaven's battles and brings victory. Daniel's prayer and fasting opened up heaven's defense system over Gabriel's battle against the prince of Persia and these demonic spirits, and brought victory over this region. And so now the word that was sent out the first day, somebody say the first day. The word that was sent out the first day finally gets to Daniel on the 21st day of his contending. Daniel had not received the opening of heaven yet in its message and its blessings and its revelation and its understanding, because in the words of Paul in Ephesians chapter 6, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but we wrestle against principalities, against rulers of darkness, against cosmic wickedness. Therefore, we put on the armor of God and we pray at all times with supplications and prayers. We dress in the armor of God so that we can pray and fast and war in the Spirit without giving up. And when we do, and heaven sees that response of tenacity and faithfulness, God sends his reinforcements from heaven. Daniel's answer was hung up in the heavenlies. And it took a continued prayer and fasting to get the message that God initially sent to him. It took a contending in prayer and fasting for him to receive the information. The insight that Daniel longed for was received as a result of his continued contention for the things of God, for understanding of God's plans and purposes and promises for his people. God broke open the heavens so that Daniel could receive the insight that he so desperately longed for. And then the angels of God, standing before the presence of God, sent to Daniel, began to minister strength to his weakness. He starts laying down fearful and trembling, and by the end he's standing up in the presence of these angelic messengers, and he has received the very words that he has prayed and fasted for. He receives the insight, And watch this, it's not just for the next 10 years. He receives so much insight that it actually lasts through the end of human history in Daniel 11:12. He gets so much more than he bargained for. He had no idea that when he said, God, will you show me what's to come, that God would literally lay out a roadmap for the rest of human history. The heavens were opened. The insight and revelation from heaven were poured into Daniel's mind, and the encouragement in his heart that he so desperately needed, that you're loved and strengthened, were sent to him by ministering angels. That's why in Matthew chapter 4, after Jesus' fast, it says in the text that God sent his angels to minister to him in the wilderness. When you pray and when you fast, there is an open heaven over your life where revelation, insight, information, wisdom begin pouring down, and the strength that you need for whatever you're facing is given by God's messengers themselves. Church, will you stand with me? I want you to not leave here and just say, wow, I'm inspired about fasting and prayer, and then not do it. I want to invite you over the next week. I know it's not always medically possible. I get that. But even if it's not medically possible, there's still some things that can be done. There's still some things that you can do. There's still some sacrifices that you can make in order to consecrate yourself to God. So my encouragement to you is this. We have 1 week left before our prayer summit. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, nor has it entered into the heart of man that which God has prepared for them. But God has revealed them to us through the Spirit. For the Spirit searches all things, even the depths of God, Paul told the church at Corinth. And there are some things he wants to reveal to us this week and at this prayer summit that can come no other way but by prayer and fasting. This kind, Jesus said, of demonic influence can only be addressed through prayer and fasting. Church, there is a level of activity that God has for this church. There is a level of glory. There is an outpouring of the Holy Spirit that will be seen through corporate prayer and fasting. So here's my challenge this week. Pick a day, pick a couple days, pick a meal a day, pick a few meals on a few days. I'm not being legislative or legalistic about it, but do something. Do something with this word. Don't let it sit and say, I'll fast in March. Probably won't happen. I know from my own personal experience when I say that, it normally doesn't happen. Take these words and apply them this week, and let's come back together at Harp and Bowl Wednesday. Let's come back together at Prayer Summit Saturday, 9 a.m., and let's see a level of encounter and revelation and Holy Spirit movement in this church and in this city and in this nation like we've never seen before, by a remnant who will contend for something in the heavenlies through prayer and fasting. So I want you now, just as a way to focus in, just close your eyes and imagine what you could see, what you could hear, what heaven has opened over your life if you'll join in this journey. And then if that's you and you say, I want to see like never before, I want to hear like never before, I want heaven opened over my life like never before. If that's you, just lift up your hand. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for you. If you say, that's me, I haven't really done this that much, and it's kind of wigging me out, it's scaring me a little bit, but I need to join in this. Thank you. God sees you. It's not about me seeing you. It's about God seeing you. And He sees the hand that's raised as an extension of your heart. And I just want to pray over you this week that you would have the strength to do what your heart's longing for right now in the presence, in the people of God, that you'd have the strength to do it. So Lord Jesus, I thank you that right now you're infusing people with strength to carry out your purposes in their life, to contend for things, to pray and fast for some things, to seek you with great fervency while you may be found in a season of grace and mercy, in an epoch of human history where you want to do so much. God, count us in. Let us in the game. God, we just want to join in prayer and fasting and pray and fast like Daniel did, who said, I am willing to exchange the delicacies of this world to experience the delightful words of God. God over my life. I'm willing to exchange the delicacies of the king's meat to hear the delicacies from the Father's mouth. I'm loved. I'm loved. God, I just pray that you would give us all the strength to carry out what you've called us to do this week. So church, I want to bless you today. If you'll just open up your hands in front of you. Church, I bless you today in the name of God the Father. I bless you today in the name of God the Son. And I bless you today in the name of God the Holy Spirit, that your eyes, as you fast and pray, will be opened to see spiritual realities you've never seen before. Things about God, things in the Word of God, things in your prayer life, things in your family that you never dreamed of, that your eyes would be open to see. I bless your ears today to pop open, to hear the commendation of the Lord, to hear His voice say, I love you. I select and choose you. I am for you. I am the one who fights your battles. I'm the one who goes behind you and before you and beside you and around you. I'm the one who responds to you when you're in need. And I bless your minds and your hearts to experience the open heaven over you, that they would be filled, as Paul prayed for the church in Ephesus, with revelation and insight from the Lord like never before in your life. And that your hands and feet, although they may grow weak through giving up the delicacies of this world in your life with Him, that your hands and feet would be made strong to carry out His purpose in your life. So may the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God the Father and the fellowship of His precious and sweet Holy Spirit be with you all.